Greetings from the field in Croatia. In this short contribution, I follow an insight emerging from ongoing ethnographic fieldwork in Southeast Europe. This insight potentially disrupts the invisibility trope often used when discussing veteran women, gender, and socio-political narratives in veteran studies. My ethnographic fieldwork is part of a broader anthropological research project with war veterans from a number of nationalities and ethnicities in former Yugoslavia. As my work specifically with Croatian veterans progresses, I have been able to spend more and more time alongside veteran women in different parts of the country. In turn, this has connected and contextualized my ongoing reviews of gender-oriented literature situated within veteran studies, along with the approaches and tropes such as invisibility or erasure common in our conversations today. A short selection of this literature has been incorporated into this talk, and those which I mentioned are listed in the references section at the end of this video. But for example, the researchers West and Antrobus, who are women veterans of the British military, offer personal experiences with invisibility. They share that as women veterans reclaiming civilian female identity, they are largely invisible both to the military and what they consider conventional veterans. In a similar vein, Best, Hunter, and Thomas present in Fighting for a Seat at the Table excellent research that connects heavily with the concepts of visibility and erasure. They argue that gendered reintegration create invisible veterans, with the result being an underrepresentation in public life. They also note that this term, invisible veterans, has been adopted by various American programs and researchers. Now, while I do not dispute that the invisibility trope might be broadly deployable within countries such as the United States that have what Best, Hunter, and Thomas describe as relatively good gender norms, I suggest we need to be careful of projecting the invisibility trope outwards. Within my own ethnographic fieldwork, what is being more sharply rendered is a disruption to the seemingly universal or default application of the invisibility trope. Specifically, conversations held with veteran women in Croatia via guided group discussions, semi-structured one-on-one interviews, and just casual walk and talks and coffee clashes bring forth a counter-narrative to invisibility that in turn formed the impetus for this video. Their perspective here is that they are not necessarily being rendered invisible or erased, but being actively relegated to what they refer to most commonly as second place. One of the first insights to this perspective came during discussions with research reciprocateur and veteran Sabina Mahalic-Protelipac. Without ambiguity, she stated that veteran women are not invisible, we are just too busy with all the day-to-day gender-based tasks and expectations. Sabina also sent me the text of a speech she delivered in 2018, wherein she asserted that, no, we are not invisible, we just had different priorities in life. A different yet collaborative insight came as I spent time with veteran women in Vinkovci, Croatia, several of whom are pictured in the contextualization of this video. While we toured the former battlegrounds of Vukovar together, this narrative of second place was routinely repeated. Tellingly, the association president also informed me that not one veteran woman in her district had received post-war medals. While male veterans have racked up medals in position, veteran women have only received what can be translated as certificates of participation. So, visible, but relegated to second place. Another observation comes from the memorial complex of Vukovar. Prominently situated within one of the buildings is an excellent exhibit of portraits. Each portrait is of a wounded veteran, with their wounds intensely centered, thus commanding the viewer's gaze. Amongst the 30 or so portraits, there is not one veteran woman. And speaking more generally, portraits or exhibits of veteran women are displayed less prominently or permanently, so again, in second place, and only when the veteran women themselves actively initiate the inclusion or the exhibits, or when, shall we say, veteran women actively make time for their inclusion. With this counter-narrative of second place comes the disruption to the trope and conversations of invisibility. This disruption creates certain demands that we within veteran studies become more self-reflexive of positionality and terminology, as well as a demand to reimagine and connect gender narratives transnationally. Toward that end, some researchers today are engaging with patriarchal or sexist subjugations to gender norms following combat. Here, I'm thinking of work such as Ngewa Oda's and White's fresh and really insightful work with Ethiopian women veterans. The authors assert that women's risk of being marginalized is great because women fighters' gender identity cannot be easily reconciled with predominant traditional gender ideologies. With this in mind, I suggest that we become more self-reflexive, thus more discerning, in how we deploy or apply the tropes of invisibility or erasure. I see this as following with Eichler's warning in Add Female Veterans in Stir that it is important to not rush to include gender without a thorough consideration of our conceptualization of gender. And in heeding that warning, the perspective of being visible but being perpetually in second place needs to be placed in conversation with the trope of invisibility within our work. For if anything, perhaps the most stable usage of invisibility within conversations held by veteran studies today might actually be to indicate the near zero inclusion of voices from veteran women living life both different and distant from the North Atlantic realm. Thank you very much.